Morning. You often hear that one of the greatest tests to a marriage is, can it survive a remodel or a building project? And what is true in a physical sense with a marriage is probably just as true in a spiritual sense when you talk about our church family. If a church family can survive a remodel or a building project, it was probably meant to last. You know, back in 2012, we expanded our auditorium. We were running out of room. We didn't feel like it was cost effective to build a brand new auditorium. Plus, it didn't solve all of our issues, which was fellowship space and classroom space. So we decided that we would buy ourselves some time, perhaps, by expanding our auditorium and moving on to another phase after that, which is what we're doing right now with a family center, classroom space, fellowship space, that kind of thing. But while we were doing the expansion in 2012, the contractor was talking with me one day, very nice guy, certainly meant well, but he said, well, I guess you should expect some people to leave over this. And I thought, what? He said, oh yeah, I mean, you'll have some people mad. They won't like the color scheme. They won't like the design. You can expect them to be angry and leave. And he must have thought I was naive or nuts or both, because I said, well, I think our people are different. I don't think they would react that way. I tell you that this morning because I want to prove him wrong. I want to issue a challenge to you this morning. I want to prove him wrong. Now understand, I'm not berating him. He didn't mean anything by that. He just goes off experience. But I think we are different because we're invested in the right things. Family Center's great. It's going to be a great, nice, new, modern building. But it's only a tool. It is only a resource to accomplish something bigger, something that we have set our minds to. And when you are invested in the relationships, in the work of the church, you would never think about leaving over silly surface things. When you're invested in something bigger, you don't sulk and pout over the color scheme or the architectural design because it's about something bigger. You know, you may not like the design, you may not like the color choices, you may not even see the need. I just want to ask you to stay positive. You know, there are growing pains that are going to come. Some of you have already experienced those this morning as you had to park way away from the building, right? I ask that you stay positive, that you remember there's a bigger picture here, that there's something greater down the line that we're working toward, and it's not just a building. We are using that as a resource and as a tool to build something much bigger here. And when you build, you have growing pains, and it seems like every time you undertake something big, there's criticisms involved. Can I be open and honest with you this morning? I mean, we're all friends here, right? I got to tell you, I am very uneasy with the tradition of the preacher standing at the back door of the church and greeting people when they leave. Not because of you. All of you are great to me. I'm very fortunate to be in the bubble that I am in because I hear other preachers talk and they say, oh, you know, I'm dealing with this issue, and I just don't deal with that. It's very nice to have people every week encourage you and hug your neck, but I've had experiences at the back door that are not good. And it leaves you very vulnerable. It's why I'm very uneasy about it. There are so many Sundays when I'd like to get done preaching and say, y'all have a great day, I'm out of here. That was genius to put that door there, whoever did that. I've had people come to me at the back door of the church building that were the grammar Nazis. I've had people come to the back door as I was standing there and do a hit and run or a drive-by where they say something so shocking that stuns you and you don't even know how to respond. Had a gentleman one time come up to me after a sermon I preached on how can I be happy in heaven with loved ones in hell. And I talked about my grandfather's situation, who grew up in a Catholic orphanage, who never came to the truth. And I talked about that in that sermon, that, you know, it was really difficult for me to get a handle on that and, you know, where he is at now and all that. And this gentleman came up to me and he said, I'll tell you one thing, if your grandfather wasn't baptized for the forgiveness of his sins, he ain't in heaven. Just very directly, very firmly, very angrily. I've had all kinds of experiences at the back door of the church, and not all of them have been good. You're very vulnerable. But I've also learned that If I'm ever going to be better, I need to be at the back door. There are experiences there that are always going to make me better. And one of them is criticism. Now, while I don't receive a lot of criticism from you folks, and I appreciate, that you're so kind and encouraging, all criticism, all correction can be good, can it? I mean, there's usually a kernel of truth, even if it wasn't presented very well. And even if there is no truth to it, then at the very least, it teaches you how to deal with difficult people, right? And so criticism is not necessarily a bad thing. Understand, I'm not belly aching or crying for sympathy. I know what I signed up for. But I think there's a lot to be learned from correction. And I think that we better just expect it if we take up the mantle of leadership, if we are going to grow, it's just going to happen, right? And that brings me to Nehemiah again. We talked about him last week. I love Nehemiah because he was a preacher and he was a coach. And that's where our similarities end. Because I would love to be of the same character, integrity, and reputation of Nehemiah. I'm just not. I hope to be someday. But Nehemiah took on a very unenviable task, the task of rebuilding the city walls. The people had been in exile. Now they were returning home after a generation of being in exile and being beaten down, being abused physically and having to work constantly. Now they come back with hope and enthusiasm, and quickly that hope and enthusiasm dwindles. It fades because while they were free, they now see all the hopelessness and despair that they were taken away from, and how are they ever going to get it back? Nehemiah left a prominent position with no hope, or really no guarantee, I should say, that it would ever work. But not only was he building a wall, he was building a people. That was the biggest thing. It wasn't just the city he was rebuilding a people. And to take up the mantle of leadership, to take on an endeavor like that, like a building project, is going to probably bring some criticism. And I want you to notice what is written in Nehemiah chapter 4, beginning in verse 1. It says, "Now it came about that when Sanballat heard that they were rebuilding the wall, he became furious and very angry and mocked the Jews. He spoke in the presence of his brothers and the wealthy men of Samaria and said, 'What are these feeble Jews doing? Are they going to restore it for themselves? Can they offer sacrifices? Can they finish in a day? Can they revive the stones from the dusty rubble, even the burned ones?' Now Tobiah the Ammonite was near him, and he said, 'Even what they are building, if a fox should jump on it, he would break their stone wall down.'" Let's be honest here. There are Sanballats and Tobiahs in every congregation, aren't there? I mean, there really are. There are always those people who want to stand back and play armchair quarterback and tell you what you're doing wrong. And typically the Sanballats and the Tobiahs are the ones that are doing the least. They're on the wrong side of the wall. To be on the right side of the wall means you're on the side that is building it up. You're laboring diligently to build something strong and sturdy. If you're on the other side of that wall, you're the boo birds and the naysayers. You're the ones that are just seeking to tell them what they're doing wrong and not invest anything more. Sometimes the Sanballats and the Tobiahs think that they're helping, but they're really not. They're only hindering the work that needs to be done. Notice what the criticisms were. Notice that he spoke in the presence of his brothers and the wealthy men of Samaria and said, "What are these feeble Jews doing? Are they going to restore it themselves? Can they offer sacrifices? Can they finish it in a day? Can they revive the stones from the dusty rubble, even the burned ones?" One thing that we notice about critics is they always seem to gather a following, don't they? Critics are really good at rounding up a posse, getting people on their side. Instead of going to the one that they have a problem with, they go to everyone else and say, "Don't you agree? Aren't you on my side?" And Tobiah joins in, right? Even what they're building, if a fox should jump on it, it'd break apart. Even if they do get the wall built, even if it does stand for a moment, a fox can jump on it and knock it down. It's not going to be sturdy. Nehemiah did not accept the criticism. He didn't even deal with it, really, did he? He just kept working. And one of the things we see about Nehemiah and his wonderful leadership is that he fought the battle on his knees. I want you to notice Picking up in verse 4 of chapter 4, it says, "Hear, O God, how we are despised. Return their reproach on their heads and give them up for plunder in a land of captivity. Do not forgive their iniquity and let not their sin be blotted out before you, for they have demoralized the builders. So we built the wall, and the whole wall was joined together to half its height, for the people had a mind to work. Nehemiah chose to fight the battle on his knees. And you are never stronger than when you are prostrate before God." The most powerful position you could ever be in is being on your knees, submissive before God. And I want you to notice something else. Nehemiah took it to God, he prayed, and he got back to work. Simple as that. I don't have time to deal with this. I'm going to bring it to God, and then I'm going to get back to doing what I need to be doing, because he had a mind to work. The people had a mind to work. You know, sometimes the greatest threat to the Lord's church comes from within, not without. Sometimes I think the devil just props his feet up and sits back and spectates and watches the church fall apart without him doing anything. Because people are consumed with infighting and backbiting and all sorts of other things like gossip and things of that nature. Let's be on the right side of the wall here. I'm not saying that you're not. Let's just make certain that as we go forward, that we're on the right side of the wall, staying focused on what it means to be building a people, to be building a community of faith, to be building something much greater than a wall or a building. I read the story a couple of weeks ago about Henry Box Brown. Henry Brown was a slave back in the 1800s who sought freedom. And he gained his freedom by contorting himself into a very small crate, about this wide, about that tall. And he made a 350-mile journey by railroad, by ship, confined to this box. Most of the time he was upside down. The journey took him 27 hours. Can you imagine being cooped up in such a small space for 27 hours? But then can you imagine the freedom that must have been felt by Henry Box Brown when they opened the lid and he was able to get out and begin a new life, free from slavery? And as I was reading this story, I was thinking about the Israelites and how they must have felt leaving that box of slavery to their freedom. They had been boxed in for so long, right? And now they were beginning a new life of freedom, just like Henry Box Brown was. But if you know anything about those days, about our history, you know that Henry Brown didn't just immediately have a life that was so much better. And the Israelites were the same way. Although they were free, they still dealt with a whole lot. There was still hopelessness and despair. I want you to notice Nehemiah chapter 6, starting in verse 3. It says, "So I sent messengers to them, saying, I am doing a great work, and I cannot come down. Why should the work stop while I leave it and come down to you?" While there was freedom from exile, there was also a lot of distraction. The task was daunting. Even though they were free, that elation was quickly replaced by despair and hopelessness. And there were several attempts made to distract Nehemiah and the workers. Sanballat and Tobiah and Geshem called for Nehemiah to come and meet with them, but Nehemiah would not leave the work. Finally, an open letter arrived accusing Nehemiah of rebuilding the city just so he could set himself up as king. And if he didn't come and meet with them in order to clear up the matter, then they would have no choice but to tell King Artaxerxes. But Nehemiah saw through what they were trying to do. He couldn't leave the work. He couldn't leave the people that he was leading. And he wouldn't play petty politics. He kept working. I think Nehemiah knew that his reputation would stand. When you have an impeccable reputation and character, people can say things about you, but nobody's going to believe them. And Nehemiah knew also knew that he couldn't leave the work, and he also knew that this was God's wall, wasn't his. And that as long as he and the other workers rallied around to get the job done, God was going to see to it that it was finished. You know, distractions are always present, it seems like. And building a new building could easily become a distraction if we're not careful. We've got to remember what we're building here, that it goes bigger than something that's just made of brick and mortar. I don't have to educate you on distractions. All of you have dealt with distractions in your life. All of you deal with distractions on a daily basis, don't you? You try to get some things done. You try to put God first, yet your phone dings because you have a text or it's ringing constantly. There's a knock at the door. Somebody's always vying for your attention. There are all sorts of distractions that bombard us every single day that seek to keep us from being focused on what it is that's most important. Elders deal with this. I mean, we've talked before about so many times the elders are so busy petting the billy goats that they can't tend the sheep. That happens so often in church. But not only that, there are certain things that come up that maybe an elder shouldn't have to deal with because it's pettiness, it's issues that maybe that distract them from what's most important. You know, the deacon doesn't cover all of the details he's supposed to cover. The preacher doesn't preach like he's supposed to, or maybe says something not exactly the way they wanted to hear it, or maybe, you know, somebody else has taken on a work and they're not doing it like they think that it should be done, and so the elders are called and they have to step in and they're pulled away from what they should be doing. But understand this. If you're a wounded soldier, that's important. And I think sometimes there are people in the congregation that feel like they don't want to be a distraction, and so they suffer in silence, and that's not good. As I said last week, we need to be about the work. We need to have a mind to work, but we also, first and foremost, need to be about people. Your workers are not going to be invested if they don't think you're invested in them. And I can tell you our elders are completely invested in you. Our staff is completely invested in you. More than in a building or anything else that's physical, we are concerned about your spiritual welfare and even your physical welfare. You know, I can remember in college I took a class called Wisdom Literature. It was over Proverbs and Ecclesiastes, and it was a hard class. And our teacher probably could have made it a little easier, but it was very difficult. And I remember one day having a question about an assignment, and so I went up to talk to my teacher to get maybe some pointers on how to go about it. And as I walked up, I noticed his door was open. It was his office hours, and so I peeked my head in and I said, "Hey, I've got a question about this, sir. Can you help me?" And he didn't seem like he wanted to help me too much, so he gave me a pretty short answer, and I knew I probably needed to leave him alone. And I no more got out of his office and got 2 steps away that he slammed his door as if to say, "Don't bother me again." Now, I've been guilty of the same thing, not slamming my door, but I've been guilty of putting the job before the people. I mean, I don't blame him too much, but his message was strong and it was clear. I've got work to do. I don't have time to deal with you. That, I pray, will never be the case here. If you're a wounded soldier, we want to help you because your work will suffer if you're suffering. There's a lot to be done here, but there are a lot of people that are hurting, and we want to help you. We all need to have a mind to work, but first and foremost, we need to have a heart for people. So you're not a distraction, but there are things that are distractions, and we've got to keep those at bay. We cannot allow our elders to be focused on things that don't matter, that are simply petty distractions. The final attack on Nehemiah's efforts came from someone he trusted. I want you to notice what is written in Nehemiah chapter 6, starting in verse 10. It says, "When I entered the house of Shemaiah, the son of Delaiah, son of Mehetabel, who was confined at home, he said, 'Let us meet together in the house of God within the temple, and let us close the doors of the temple, for they are coming to kill you, and they are coming to kill you at night.' But I said, 'Should a man like me flee? And could one such as I go into the temple to save his life? I will not go in.' Then I perceived that surely God had not sent him, but he uttered his prophecy against me because Tobiah and Sanballat had hired him. He was hired for this reason, that I might become frightened and act accordingly and sin, so that they might have an evil report in order that they could reproach me. Remember, O my God, Tobiah and Sanballat according to these works of theirs, and also Noadiah the prophetess and the rest of the prophets who were trying to frighten me. So Shemaiah seems to be shut up in his home, presumably seeking a revelation from God on Nehemiah's behalf, and it seemed credible in the beginning. Nehemiah must have feared for his life, at least somewhat, but ultimately it turned out to be a hoax. It was all a part of the sick plan of Sanballat and Tobiah to remove Nehemiah from the work, to keep him from accomplishing what he had set out to do. Nehemiah eventually sees through it. He knew that if he gave in to fear, that he would be viewed as weak and not courageous. His integrity and his character would take a huge hit. If he allowed the rumors to get to him, then that would greatly affect what he was trying to accomplish. Nehemiah would rather die than disappoint. Leaders are often courageous individuals, and Nehemiah's courage in this moment preserved his reputation before the people. And I realize that Nehemiah's situation and our situation is a little different, right? I mean, we don't have the fear of someone seeking to kill me or one of the elders because of what we're trying to do here. We don't have to fear for our lives because we're trying to build something. But like Nehemiah, we have a vision. And with that vision comes anxiety, worry, perhaps even fear. I can tell you our elders aren't afraid of the future here, but it probably causes them some sleepless nights. I mean, there's some anxiety anytime you set out on a huge endeavor. Not just building a building, but just there's anxiety associated with leading a people, always. I mean, our elders are ensured with the task of seeing to it that your soul is well taken care of. That's a monumental task, one that doesn't come without some anxiety and maybe even some fear at times. But here's the thing. There was some worry and anxiety, I'm sure, when 70-plus people left Baker Heights to come here and to plant this congregation back in the mid-90s. There's always worry and anxiety. But we need to be able to dream so big that only God can make it come to fulfillment. When we put together a budget with the help of Tom Bailey and our elders, I always encourage to leave room for faith in that budget. Because we can cross every T and we can dot every I and we can make sure that we're financially secure, and we need to do that. That's the wise and prudent thing to do. But you better leave room for faith. Because if not, why are we even doing this? Why are we even setting forth on this journey, right? Our vision needs to include God, and we need to dream so big that only God can bring it to fulfillment, right? Because nothing that we accomplish is going to be on our own efforts. It's going to be because God was behind it. You know, without a doubt, as we go forward in this building project, there are going to be some distractions. There's probably going to be some criticisms. There's going to be some fear. There may be other obstacles that I haven't brought out this morning, but here's the thing. I want to give you 3 things that will help us in avoiding these obstacles, or at least helping us to overcome them. Number 1, pray. You know, there are times that we need to do more than pray, but we shouldn't do anything without starting with prayer. Pray for the success of our mission. Not that we get the building built necessarily, but that it serves the purpose. That we continue to live out the purpose for which we were planted, right? That we do God's will in all things, that we make and grow disciples. Secondly, I ask that you challenge yourself to greater service. If you're not currently invested in the work of the church, I encourage you to do so. If you were invested at one point, but you've since taken a leave of absence, I encourage you to get back into the work. And if you're someone who is new and you're looking for work, let us help you. We want you to be totally invested in what we're trying to do here. And then finally, Remember to invest in what truly matters, though. Any work that we do here has a common purpose, and that is to make and grow disciples. We can't forget that. We're not trying to program ourselves to death. We're not trying to just spin a bunch of plates. We have a purpose for everything that we're doing here. Invest in what matters. Remember that this is so much bigger than anything else that you may engage in. I want to encourage you this morning to keep living out the vision. We started with a vision, a pioneering vision that brought us here at this place and at this time. And we've got a great future ahead of us. Let's be totally invested. Let's be all in. And let's pray. Our most kind and gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for bringing us here. We thank you for this church family. We thank you for growth, and we pray that we continue to grow as we seek to be more like Jesus. Help us, God, to never lose sight of what's most important, to invest in what matters most. And like Nehemiah, like the people, that we have a mind to work. But let us not forget to have a heart for people as well. And let that come first. Help us, God, to always seek you, to put you as first priority, and to remember that it's not about us. And may we seek to live in a bigger kingdom. It's in your Son's precious name we pray. Amen. You know, this morning you may be struggling with something. You may be a wounded soldier. You may need the prayers and support of this church family, and certainly we want to take care of that. Maybe you're ready to begin a daily walk with God, and you're ready to put on Christ in baptism. Maybe you're someone that needs some help in discerning the Scriptures, and you want to study the Bible with somebody. We want to help you with that as well. If you're visiting with us this morning, my guess is you came here for some reason. Maybe it's because you're hurting and you need something. Let us help you with that. Whatever your need is, come now as we stand and as we sing.